Okay, Chapter 7, Crimes Against Persons, full review. Lesson 1, the investigative sequence. The lesson establishes the foundational steps required when responding to a crime against a person. It outlines the chronological progression of an initial response from securing the scene to conducting preliminary interviews and documenting evidence. The fatal funnel, a critical tactical consideration when arriving at a potentially volatile scene. It refers to the dangerous hazard of standing directly in front of a door or entrance, making an officer an easy target for an unseen threat inside. Instrumentalities of the crime. These are the items, tools, or objects used by the suspect to commit the offense. Example, a weapon used in an assault or a rope used in a restraint. Canvass, a systematic door-to-door inquiry of residents, business owners, or bystanders in the area surrounding a crime scene to locate additional witnesses, gather intelligence, or track suspect movement. Lesson 2, Victims' Rights and Brochures, focuses on the statutory obligations of law enforcement regarding victim care, primarily ensuring that victims are informed of their rights and provided with mandatory resource documentation. Victim notification. Officers are legally required to provide crime victims with a victim rights brochure, Marcy's Law information, explaining their constitutional protections, right to be heard, and resources for compensation or advocacy. Unit 2, Crimes Against Persons. Lesson 1, Assault and Battery. The lesson breaks down the distinct legal differences between a threat of violence, assault, and actual physical contact battery, including the escalating statutory factors. Assault is an intentional and unlawful threat by word or act to do violence to a victim, coupled with an apparent ability to do so, creating a well-founded fear that violence is imminent. Aggravated assault, an assault made with a deadly weapon without intent to kill or with an intent to commit a felony. Deadly weapon, any instrument used or threatened to be used in a manner likely to cause death or great bodily harm. Battery, actually and intentionally touching or striking a victim against their will or intentionally causing bodily harm. Felony battery, intentionally touching or striking a victim against their will and causing significant injury, great bodily harm, permanent disability, or permanent disfigurement. It also applies to a second or subsequent battery conviction. Aggravated battery, a battery where the suspect intentionally or knowingly causes great bodily harm, permanent disability, or permanent disfigurement, uses a deadly weapon, or targets a victim known to be pregnant. Domestic battery by strangulation, a felony battery against a family household member or dating partner where the suspect knowingly and intentionally impedes normal breathing or blood circulation by applying pressure to the throat or neck or blocking the nose or mouth. Lesson 2, Domestic Violence, addresses criminal acts occurring within specific domestic relationships, emphasizing mandatory arrest provisions and court-ordered protections. Domestic violence, any criminal offense, example, assault, battery, stalking, kidnapping, resulting in physical injury or death of one family or household member by another. Family or household members, spouses, former spouses, persons related by blood or marriage, persons currently or formerly residing together as a family in a single dwelling unit, and parents who have a child in common regardless of whether they have ever lived together. Dating violence, violence between individuals who have or have had a continuing and significant relationship of a romantic or intimate nature within the past 6 months. No contact order or pretrial release condition prohibiting communication or contact with a victim or being within 500 feet of their residence, workplace, or vehicle. Injunction, a civil court order whose violation has criminal consequences designed to protect victims from domestic, dating, repeat, or sexual violence and stalking. Lesson 3, Stalking Crimes, deals with repetitive, unwanted behaviors that cause emotional distress or place a victim in fear for their safety. Stalking, willfully, maliciously, and repeatedly following, harassing, or cyber stalking a victim. maliciously, wrongfully, intentionally, without legal justification, and with knowledge that injury or damage may be caused. Aggravated stalking a victim and making a credible threat to them, their family, or close associates. Credible threat, a verbal or nonverbal threat that places someone in reasonable fear for their safety. Cyberstalk, engaging in a course of conduct via electronic communication, emails, text, social media, directed at a specific person, causing substantial emotional distress, and serving no legitimate purpose. Lesson 4, child abuse, outlines the protection of minors from physical, psychological, and medical harm inflicted by caregivers or third parties. Child abuse, knowingly or willfully inflicting physical or mental injury on a child under 18, committing an act expected to cause injury or encouraging another to do so. Child neglect occurs when a caregiver grossly and deliberately fails to provide essential care, food, shelter, medicine, supervision necessary for a child's health, or fails to protect them from harm. Caregiver, a person responsible for the welfare of a child, example, a parent, guardian, and adult household member. Abandonment, a situation where a caregiver, while able, makes no significant contribution to a child's care or fails to maintain a positive relationship. Baby safe haven, designated locations, hospitals, fire stations, EMS stations, where a parent can legally and anonymously surrender an infant, approximately 30 days old or younger, without facing abandonment charges. Abusive head trauma, a traumatic brain injury to an infant or child under 6 years old, resulting from violent shaking or blunt impact. Lesson 5, abuse, neglect, and exploitation of an elderly person or disabled adult. Protects vulnerable adult populations from physical mistreatment, failure to provide care, and financial victimization. Abuse of an elderly person, disabled adult, knowingly or willfully subjecting a vulnerable adult to behavior expected to cause physical or psychological harm, or unlawfully isolating them. Neglect of an elderly person, disabled adult, a caregiver's willful failure to provide the care, supervision, and services essential to maintain the physical or mental health of an elderly or disabled adult. Exploitation, the unauthorized taking, attempting to take, or seizure of a vulnerable adult's funds, assets, or property, often by abusing a special or fiduciary relationship. Fiduciary, a trusted individual legally responsible for managing a vulnerable adult's health, property, or finances, example, a guardian or trustee. Lesson 6, interference with custody, luring or enticing of a child, false imprisonment, and kidnapping. Deals with crimes involving the unlawful restriction of a person's liberty, movement, or legal custody. Interference with custody, knowingly or recklessly taking, enticing, or concealing a minor or incompetent person from their lawful custodian in violation of a court order. Luring or enticing a child, an individual 18 or older, intentionally attempting to lure a child under 12 into a structure, dwelling, or vehicle with the unlawful intention to commit a crime. False imprisonment, forcibly by threat or secretly confining, abducting, or restraining a victim against their will without lawful authority. Kidnapping, forcibly by threat or secretly confining, restraining a victim against their will, accompanied by a specific intent to hold them for ransom, commit a felony, inflict bodily harm, terrorize, or interfere with a government function. Lesson 7, missing or missing endangered persons, establishes the criteria for responding to reports of missing individuals, focusing heavily on populations at elevated risk. Missing endangered person, a person who is missing under circumstances that indicate they may be in physical danger, lack life-sustaining medication, have a cognitive impairment such as dementia or autism, or are a minor who may be the victim of a crime or abduction. Lesson 8, sexual offenses, covers criminal sexual behaviors, the element of consent, and technology-driven offenses involving minors. Sexual battery, non-consensual oral, anal, or vaginal penetration by or union with a sexual organ, or penetration by another object, excluding legitimate medical purposes. Coercion, the use of exploitation, bribes, threats of force, physical restraint, or intimidation to gain cooperation or compliance. Sexting, a minor using an electronic device to transmit, possess, or distribute a nude or lascivious photograph or video to another minor. Lesson 9, human trafficking, addresses modern-day slavery, distinguishing between forced labor and commercial sexual exploitation. Human trafficking, the transporting, soliciting, recruiting, harboring, or obtaining of another person through force, fraud, or coercion for the commercial sex trade or forced labor. Lesson 10, respond to a death, outlines scene protocol, tracking the physiological signs of death, and identifying the various categories of death investigations. Cause of death, the specific injury or disease that leads directly to a person's death. Manner of death, the legal determination of how an injury or disease led to death, whether it was natural, an accident, suicide, homicide, or undetermined. Homicide is the act of one human taking the life of another. Rigor mortis, the temporary post-mortem stiffening of body muscles after death. Lividity, the post-mortem color changes, often purple, black, or blue, caused by the settling of blood due to gravity. Algor mortis, the post-mortem cooling of the body to ambient temperature. Sudden unexpected infant death, SUID, a temporary diagnosis given to an infant death under 1 year old that remains unexplained until a complete autopsy, scene investigation, and medical history review are finalized. Lesson 11, robbery, focuses on property crimes that cross the threshold into violent crimes against persons due to the element of confrontation and force. Robbery is the taking of money or property from a victim with the intent to permanently or temporarily deprive them, utilizing force, violence, assault, or putting the victim in fear. Robbery by sudden snatching, the taking of money or property directly from the victim's person, where the victim becomes aware of the taking in the course of the act, but without the requirement of additional force or threats. Home invasion robbery occurs when a suspect enters a victim's dwelling while the victim is present and aware and commits a robbery inside using force, violence, or fear. Carjacking is the taking of a motor vehicle from a victim through the use of force, violence, assault, or fear.